Welcome everyone to day one of Career Bootcamp 2026, where you will explore how to turn challenges into stepping stones for growth, both personally and professionally. Oops, sorry, just one moment. Please note that this session will be offered in English and French simultaneously. So if you do want to join the French session, please return back to the Zoom lobby and you'll be able to join the French session. I'd like to just start off today with a land acknowledgement. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm here on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. The Algonquin people have lived on this land since time immemorial, and I do encourage all of you to acknowledge the land you're on as well. Career Bootcamp is the largest conference in the GC, and the only goal is to support you in your career journey. As we move through today's session, please share your questions by using the Q&A buttons in the language of your choice. You can vote for questions you like by clicking on the thumbs up button. As with all Fin sessions, this session will be recorded so you can go back and check out the recordings and the insights at a later date. In addition to the recordings on our YouTube channel, we also offer another way to learn this year, a podcast series of the Career Bootcamp sessions. After CBC, the podcast will be made available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We'd like to note that the PowerPoint presentations for each session is included on the wiki page, so feel free to follow along at your own rate and improve your learning experience. All the resources shared during this session will be added to our wiki page under the resources section. And just a reminder to, one second, and can I just get the next slide, please? And just a reminder to all the attendees, this session does include discussion topics, vocabulary, and scenarios that some learners may find distressing. Please do feel free to take breaks as you need, and if you require any support, please remember that your organization's EAP, Employee Assistance Program, is also available 24/7. Any additional resources can also be found on our wiki page. Okay, so let's begin. Just a little introduction about myself. Hello to everyone. My name is Mafuza Rahman, and I will be your moderator for this session. I have been with the public sector for over 7 years now, and I am currently a taxpayer services agent at Canada Revenue Agency. Now, before we begin, I do have a little quick polling question that we can go through. Remember, this isn't a mandatory poll. It isn't a test. These questions are just a way for us to understand where people are and what areas might need more focus. So the poll will pop up on your screen and you'll be able to place your vote. So the first question is, how confident are you in understanding of the role classification groups play in career progression within the Government of Canada? And the second question will be, have you ever pursued a lateral move as strategy for career growth or skill development? And our third question today will be, if impacted by workforce adjustment, how prepared do you feel to leverage your performance management assessment to support your career transition? Just going to give everyone a minute to put in their responses, and then we can take it up. Second. Okay, so we do have the results. So for the first question on how confident you are in understanding the role, we have somewhat confident as the majority vote, with not confident. So there's still a lot of curiosity and room to build clarity around the classification and how it relates to the career and growth, which is good, which will be amazing for this session, hopefully very informational for you. And for the second question, the majority voted no, but I'm considering it. And so lateral moves can be a valuable strategy, but how much they help can depend on individual circumstances and career goals, which is exactly the type of insight our panelist will explore today. And for the third question, let's see what everyone voted. We have not prepared, and I don't know how PMA relates to WFA. So WFA can be an uncertain and complex process, and having clarity and support is definitely essential. We'll hear more about it from our panelists and strategies and resources that can help in these situations. Now, before we begin to dive into our discussion, let's go through the learning objectives today. So by the end of our time together today, you'll be able to understand the role of classification groups within the Government of Canada. You'll also be able to recognize the value of lateral moves as a strategy for career growth and skill development. You'll also be able to navigate the workforce adjustment process and identify available supports and resources, and also leverage your performance management assessment. So now I'd like to introduce our insightful, amazing panelists today that we're so fortunate to have with us. Our first, I'd like to introduce Jermaine Aoun. As a director at Courts Administrative Service and part-time MBA professor, Jermaine combines a real-world leadership with teaching, helping professionals navigate career transitions, and communicating their value effectively. So welcome, Jermaine. And we also have next our panelist, Arlette Kasongo, a policy analyst at ISED and executive assistant for GC students. She brings both analytical expertise and a commitment to supporting early career public servants through meaningful engagement and logistical support. Welcome, Arlette. And our third panelist today is Laura Richardson. Oops. And sorry, just get the next slide. Thank you. So Laura, with over 18 years of experience across the federal public service, Laura is a values-driven leader dedicated to fostering inclusive workplaces and supporting others in their professional growth. She strives to build strong relationships, fosters collaboration, and advance Government of Canada priorities. So thank you all for being here today to share your insight and experiences. We're truly so fortunate to have these knowledgeable panelists with us today, and I'm really looking forward to the valuable perspective and information that everyone will learn today. So let's get right into the information. So I'm going to hand it over to Arlette to speak on our first topic.
All right, thank you so much. Are you guys able to hear me properly? All right, so I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm not gonna be able to turn on my videos because I do have some tech issues, but like as long as you guys can hear me, everything should be okay. So today I am gonna be talking about how we can understand the role of classification within the Government of Canada. So first of all, let's define what is a classification group. Overall in Canada, like the Government of Canada recognized that we do have over 70 classification, which is also called occupational group within the public service. And these classification groups are designed to organize jobs based on the type of work being performed rather than individual employees. In another word, we can say classification focuses on the position, not on the person who occupies it. Classification allows the public service to manage a large and diverse workforce in a structured, consistent, and transparent way across departments as well as agencies. And now, how classification groups are defined? They are used to categorize jobs based on the nature of the work that is being performed. For example, you can be like in administrative services, engineering, health, scientific researches, health and social services, and all of that based on the nature of the work that is being performed. This group are going to be categorizing the type of job each person is like doing. So in terms of classifications, they are defined based on, or they are identified based on two-letter codes followed by a label that reflect the complexity, the responsibility, the scope of the job, which are numerical codes. For example, for AS, if you see AS as a classification group, it refers to as administrative service, and then you can have a numerical code like AS02 or AS05. They are both administrative roles, but the difference comes based on the level of responsibilities and decision-making authorities. Higher level generally means greater accountabilities, more complex duties, and broader impact. We also have other codes such as EC for Economic and Social Science Services, which includes policy analysts, researchers, program officers. We also have PE for Personal Administration, E and G for Engineering, and there are so many more. So this level structures allows departments to first clearly define expectation, progress employee through career path, and compare job across the public service in a more standardized way. Now, the next question is why classification matters. Classification influences several key aspects of employment, for example, job duties and responsibilities. Classification groups are going to help define what work is expected in a role. They can also help define qualification and experience requirements, such as your education, what are your experiences, what are your competencies. They also help define pay scale. Basically, within the same group, if you do have different numerical code, then that's gonna allow each group and level to have an established salary range. And in short, classification determines job duties, qualifications, pay scales, and also collective agreement. And all of this is to ensure fairness, consistency, transparency in staffing and compensation. So, in summary, if you guys want to have a take-home message, I'm going to ask you to remember that classification groups organize the diverse work of the federal public service, define job expectation and compensation in order to promote fairness and transparency across the government. So that's pretty much all for this slide over here, and I'm going to pass it to German, who's going to discuss the next topic. Thank you so much.
Hello, all. Actually, I believe it is me next, Laura Richardson. Hello, everybody. I'm also having technical issues. It's the day of technical issues. So I'm on my phone. So you get to a beautiful view of my loft where I'm working today from Chibuktuk, also known as Halifax. So today I'm going to share some of my lived experience, both on the value of lateral moves and also on workforce adjustments. So I'm going to launch into this slide here. Often I've lived in Ottawa, I've lived in Halifax, worked for the federal government over 18 years, and there's often this view that you're always looking to advance to that next level. But a lateral move involves changing your role at your current level. And I've got to say that I love doing lateral moves. They offer exposure to new departments, functions, teams, or projects. They help build diverse competencies and broaden professional networks. 100%. This has all happened for me. They can lead to long-term career advancement and leadership readiness, and also can lead to long-term life advancement, I would argue, because it gives you a unique perspective on not just your career, but yourself as a whole person. And they also encourage adaptability, resilience, continuous learning, and growth. And I was kind of joking around about this the other day, actually at another in-person Federal Youth Network event, saying that I was the queen of lateral moves. So I've actually done quite a few different lateral moves. Right now, I work at Parks Canada. I'm a manager here for the Center of Expertise on Grants and Contributions. I've been with Parks since 2015. I was with numerous other departments before that. When joining Parks Canada in 2015 was a great experience. And I worked for national office. After a couple of years in the role, I had the opportunity to move into operations for a few years. So I worked at the mainland Nova Scotia field unit for Parks Canada and also the Cape Breton field unit for Parks Canada. And that just really gave me a broader perspective of the organization. And it also broadened my network within the organization, highly, highly valuable. About 4.5 years ago, I did another lateral move, and it was outside of Parks Canada. I took an opportunity with the Atlantic Federal Council as the manager of the Atlantic Federal Council, and that took me out of my department and into this interdepartmental space, which is really also kept my connection with the Federal Youth Network, being invited to do events like this today. So it's I just can't. It's interesting. It broadens your experience. It also sometimes gives you that perspective. So for me, for example, in my assignment with the Atlantic Federal Council, I worked with senior leaders from across Atlantic departments, and I learned more about the responsibilities and the requirements of executive roles, and that was very interesting to me. It led to me taking part in this program called the Aspiring Directors Program. And ultimately, at this point, even after all this exposure, by getting these experience, I've kind of discovered that for now, I'm actually with my life where it's at. I'm very happy in a middle manager role. Maybe I'll move on to an executive role in the future. But those lateral moves, so interesting, enriching, broadens the network. So those are kind of my key points for that slide. But we'll get into some questions later. I'm always very happy to discuss that further. So from that, we're going to move on from lateral moves as a strategy for career growth and life growth, I would argue. We're going to move into navigating the workforce adjustment. So I just want to start out by saying that I want to acknowledge that right now it's a very difficult time across the federal government. Perhaps ourselves or our colleagues are being affected, and so people are anxious and uncertain right now, and that's very understandable. I myself have lived experience with workforce adjustment, so. I've been workforce adjusted twice, if you can believe it. So the first time was with a guaranteed reasonable job offer. And I went through a process I was prioritized and I found a position. And then the second time was in the 2012 budget cut. So I'll get into that a little bit more later, but let's just give you the baseline. And also, I want to preface, I am by no means an expert. So I really encourage folks to talk with their HR, with their unions, with people who are actually experts in this, because I am not. So this is just kind of a high level overview. Workforce adjustment can happen for numerous reasons. It happens when a deputy head decides that a service or of one or more indeterminate employees is no longer required. That can be due to a lack of work. It can be due to the ending of a function. It can be due to a relocation in which the employee does not wish to participate. And it can also be due to an alternative delivery initiative. Now, I believe everyone has this presentation, and you can click on that link as well for more information. And now we can move on to navigating the workforce adjustment. So we'll go to the next slide. And some people may be experiencing this right now, and I've experienced it twice, and I'm still here. So, employees may be declared affected or surplus, and there's key options that are offered: reasonable job offer, voluntary departure, or alternation. I've alternated before. That was interesting. So the last time I was workforce adjusted, I alternated actually, but I'll get into that a little bit more. And also, as just a reminder, their supports are the HR advisors, union reps, and transition programs. And there's some resources there as well through the Canada School, through the workforce adjustment directives, priority administration system. The pension and pay centers are all supportive of employees during times of workforce adjustment. So again, so just to acknowledge, like, it's very unsettling right now. And I know back in 2012 there wasn't like Reddit and Facebook weren't kind of so active. So it's very, very easy to get discouraged and to go down different rabbit holes on what this might mean for you if you do find yourself in a situation of workforce adjustment. And again, I'm not an expert. So the first time I was workforce adjusted, it was through a strategic review for my department, and it was a guaranteed reasonable job offer, which meant that there was no time limit on when I would be able to find another position within government, because the rest of the public service could absorb the cuts from that particular department. The second time was in 2012, and I was in the Atlantic region. And I did go through a SURLO process. So some of you may have heard about this selection for retention process. I went through that process, and I had this impression that that wouldn't happen to me. I would be successful in the SURLO. But in the end, I was not successful in the SURLO, which took a real blow to my confidence at the time. It's something you're never really prepared for. So what I did in that situation is I really leaned on my supports. So my friends, my family. I also, reached out through EAP for counseling. I took advantage of the different things that were available. So I did I had some coaching paid for. I did a little bit of language training, and I really focused on what I could control. So at that time, I was into biking. I also really loved contributing to initiatives across the federal government. So I was involved with the Federal Youth Network in their support to people going through workforce adjustment. And I also sang Defying Gravity full blast in my car pretty regularly. So it's funny because Wicked is back in the scene now, but back in 2012, I remember singing that song to kind of keep me grounded. Um, as well, so what happened in that situation? I ended up alternating into a job to Ottawa, and it was really something that stretched me, built my confidence, allowed me to try on something else. And for me, it worked at that time. In the end, the risk paid off. I got some great experience. It was a lateral move, of course, with workforce adjustment. And, the growth happened from that experience. And then I was able to translate that into obtaining a job with Parks Canada, several years later. So, so I think that I will just leave it there and then hand it over to Jermaine, and then we'll get into some discussion later. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura. A very inspirational story. Loved hearing it. And thanks all for having me here today. I'm speaking from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, also known as Ottawa. And I want to start by acknowledging something very, very openly. These conversations that we're having right now are amazing conversation, even though the timing isn't the best. Like all of this workforce adjustment, time that we live in right now, this is not easy at all. It raises a lot of questions around our stability of our jobs, our identity as public servants, and even the future of our careers. And for many of us early in our careers, and I joined myself to almost most of the crowd here. I've only been in the government for 7 years, not more than that. This may be the first time that we are confronting uncertainty within an institution that we believe to always feel secure. So when I joined the government, I thought that's a secure job, never gonna lose it. And now look where we are. Everyone's uncertain, and it's not a fun period to be in. But I'd like to take advantage, being an eternal optimist, of the current situation and reframe the conversation. Whenever we speak about workforce adjustment, I think about it not just about the risk of losing a job or colleagues losing their job, but I also think about it in terms of readiness and visibility. Did I do all the right things to be ready for whenever this was going to happen? Did I do all the right things to remain visible when this is going to happen? And one of the most underutilized tools that we have within our fingertips today to strengthen that is the performance management assessment, or the PMA. For those who are not aware or who are very new to the public service, the performance management assessment is kind of a tool that where you and your manager sit down and speak about the objectives, things you have to achieve within your job. That's early in the year, and then you do a mid-year checkpoint, and then at the end of the year, you go over and summarize the things that you have achieved. You list your achievements, and you get a passing or not grade. So I want to talk about this very deliberately. Most people see the PMA exactly as I mentioned it right now. It's an annual administrative task. We meet 3 times with our manager to write the PMA for a mid-year check and an end-of-year review. And that's basically what it is. The system requires it. We have to do it, and that's the end of it. And I'm very happy in the poll, some of you said that we don't see the link between a PMA and workforce adjustment. So I want to bring that exactly to this conversation. The mindset of the PMA being just an HR or a system requirement task is costing people many opportunities. I look at it in a way where the PMA is one of very few official validated records of your performance, your competencies, and your growth within the public service. This is one of the few documents where there's evidence. It's not opinions, it's not assumptions, it's not you self-promoting yourself. It is evidence from your management for years and years that you have accomplished these things and you are ready for that growth and that next step. And in moments where things are difficult, like a workforce adjustment, this is something that allows you to tell your hiring manager, your future hiring manager, that you did demonstrate strong performance, that you have skills that are transferable, and that you can be matched within your role with minimal risk because you have shown adaptability, you've shown learning, you've shown growth, you've shown XYZ. So the PMA is where all of these answers live. And it's not just that they live because you wrote them there. They're in there and they've been vetted and signed by management for years and years and years. So basically, what I'm saying here is that a strong PMA that you're actually doing in the right way, it will support retention and placement decision. It'll help you match you with alternation or put you as a priority. And it provides you even with concrete language you can reuse for your resume, your job applications, your interview, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. Whereas a vague or an outdated PMA, and I'll tell you, this is more commonly the norm in the government, but I've seen this very often. It does the opposite. It just limits your visibility. It forces your future hiring manager to do some guesswork, and you don't want guesswork in times of adjustment like the times we're in right now. So I want to give you some actionable tips with specific examples, and we can go into more of that later on in the Q&A if you want. But one of the most common mistakes that I've seen is people write their PMA describing tasks instead of capabilities, right? So you're not talking about how you solve problem. You just say that you resolved a problem, but you're not talking about how you communicated and influenced, but you rather just say that you did a presentation. And it's just about going into more details and explaining the skills that you have. I'll give you a specific example. Let's say I'm an administrative assistant and I support a director in adjusting their calendars and booking their meetings. If I limit it to this, it says that that's all I know how to do. But supporting a director is much more than that. There's judgment, there's discretion, there's prioritization, there's executive communication. Where are those in your PMA? And how are you putting those, really emphasizing them and putting them in light so that you are considered for that next job? So I'll give you even more specific example. Uh, Looking back at what I just said as an administrative assistant, there's a risk for anyone in the AS classification, which is most administrative services, that you're being perceived as only administrative rather than operationally strategic. Here's a typical PMA entry, and I'm going to read because it's a mouthful. But typically, I've seen this for administrative assistant. A PMA entry would be provided administrative support to the director, including scheduling meetings and preparing documents. Point. Right? A bit more text, but let's say this is the gist of it. This doesn't allow you mobility because this says that you're a good administrative assistant, and basically that's most what you can do. However, if you frame it differently, provided operational and administrative support to a directorate of 20 employees by coordinating managers and executive schedules, by preparing briefing materials, and by tracking action items. I improved the workflow efficiency by standardizing meeting documentation and following up on processes, and I demonstrated strong organizational skills, judgment, and stakeholder coordination in a high-volume, fast-paced environment. Right? It's basically tasks skills that you've been doing, but that you haven't really emphasized in the previous description. And this signals that you are ready for a lateral move. So now you're not just an administrative assistant. Now you can do project management, program coordination, operations. You really show that you should be retained during these times of workforce adjustment because you demonstrated transferable skills. You have shown very strong evidence that you are ready to do that, and your manager has signed on this PMA or your director has signed on this PMA and can attest to you actually doing these things. I can give a couple of other examples on other classifications, but maybe we can leave that for the Q&A portion later on. What I'm trying to say here is that you shouldn't really limit your mobility by self-inflicted or self-limiting yourself to a classification. A poorly written PMA will limit you. But when your PMA is actually articulating all the skills, the outcomes, the growth, and the capabilities that you can offer, you're allowing the hiring manager to see beyond your job title and actually match you to an opportunity. You're basically saying, I'm here, I'm impacted, but I'm telling you that I can perform any role in any context. I'm resilient, and my PMA is obviously stating that, right? So this speeds up your matching, reduces the need for you to clarify anything. It helps your hiring manager to say yes much faster. It's kind of a career portfolio. Here's all the things that I've done, and somebody else signed on it. It's not just me self-boasting. So don't wait until the end of the year to remember what you did, okay? This is something you actually do throughout the year. I visit my PMA page on a regular basis. I actually go to the system site and I add stuff, or I have my own document in my Outlook or in my on my desktop where I keep these things, and I don't have to remember them at the end of the year. But on top of that, I also share all of these things with my supervisor and my senior director, because the PMA shouldn't be a surprise neither to me nor to him. Those are things that we need to bring up a few times. I want to leave you with one main message. Basically, the main message is you are your best career manager. Nobody is able to tell your career story as good as you. So don't let the current situation, everything that's happening around us, dictate what your career story is. If you're affected, it may be a small bump or a small slowdown, but at the end of the day, you manage all of that. So just gonna take a quick sip. Apologies for that. But just to end on a note, remember, your PMA is a career document. It's not a compliance task. If you make an effort to write it in outcomes and capabilities, not just duties and activities, it allows you to cross many hurdles, but also to achieve what you want to achieve for your next career growth. It's not about the past. It's not about just documenting what you've done in the past, but more about protecting and predicting your future. And one last thing to protect your future even more, feel free to follow me on LinkedIn where I share daily tips and free resources on career transition. And on that note, I'll turn it back to Mahfouza. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jermaine. And thank you so much as well, Laura and Arlette, all of you sharing your perspective, your lived experiences, and some very helpful information. We recognize this is a very complex time for many of us, and we appreciate your openness and guidance and support during this time. So we'll jump right into the Q&A. We want to get through as many questions as we can. So I'm just going to pull that up right now. 1 second. So for this part, for my panelist, whoever likes to answer the question, you can, and the others can definitely contribute and share and add to it, but we'll try to get through as many questions as we can. So for the first question we have, 1 second. Okay, just refresh. Once you hit a certain level, it seems like all the jobs involve management. Are there many opportunities for growth for people who don't aspire to manage others? Who would like to take that?
I don't mind taking that. That's a great question. And it's something actually that I have also kind of grappled with in the past. And really, I'm going to come back to that lateral move. There's I mean, if you want to advance, say, it depends what stream you're in, but if you do want to advance into the executive level, that does require managing people. But you can do lateral moves if you're a specialist. You can advance to levels like EC6, EC7 in the policy world. So there's definitely options to advance without going into the management role. But I would also say that the lateral moves, even though perhaps they're not advancing your salary, it's advancing your growth and your connection and your understanding of the government of Canada as a whole. So I hope that helps. Maybe somebody else wants to jump in as well.
Thank you so much, Laura. I'll go to the next question just because we have quite a few. Did you want to add anything, Jermaine? Sorry, I did.
It's probably linked to the next question, which is around lateral moves. I just want to add to what Laura mentioned that a career mobility in the public service doesn't always mean moving up. We don't all want to be managers or directors. Often it means actually moving across because we have to look at ourselves. What are the roles that are interesting for us that can broaden my experience, that can strengthen my profile, that can prepare me for that future step that I want to get to? Each one of us has their own career path, and it doesn't have to be linear. But to get to that next step that you want, what do you need? And sometimes it's not the next level. Sometimes it's a lateral move to allow you to get to that next level. And again, the PMA is what helps you get ready for these moves because in the PMA, that's where you also mention Do you want French training, for example? Do you want some acting opportunity? Do you want to manage a couple of students to learn a thing or two? So there's a couple of things that you can add in your PMA to, I'm gonna say, force your boss to achieve them. And that's a very strategic discussion that can happen with an open and honest conversation on performance management and career goals with your higher ups.
Thank you, Jermaine. I'll move to the next question, which is connected. So, is a lateral move a better option than a promotion when thinking about medium? Oh, sorry, one second. About medium to long-term career development?
I can probably take this one, Mafuza. I don't think there's something called a better move. It's what is the move that is good for you at this point in time. There is no better move. There's no speed. We're not in a rat race. Okay, each one has a move that is good for them at a specific point in time. In your case, today, it may be a lateral move. In your case, tomorrow, it may be a promotion. So both options are very good options. What have you acquired in terms of skills already? Where do you need to go? And what is the gap? How can you fill the gap? Sometimes filling that gap is lateral, and sometimes filling that gap is promotional.
Thank you. And maybe we'll have Arlette also take the next one. This one is there any advice for moving from one classification to another, such as AS to FI or AS to EC? Whichever one of you wants to take this one can. Oh,
I'll probably take a stab at this one. So I haven't moved a lot in terms of classification, but I moved between Eng, which is engineer, and IT, which is complete IT as it says. And the move was mostly focusing on transferable skills. So managing a project. I've managed a construction project and I've managed an IT project. Are they the exact same thing? No, they're not. But do they use the same concepts of project management? Yes, they do. So I was able to justify that I'm a very solid project manager and I've delivered big construction projects and I've set up project management offices successfully in the construction industry. Can I do the same in an IT world? Yes, I have the skill set to do that. I may lack some of the technical things, but that's where maybe the rest of the team can compensate. So as long as you position it in terms of transferable skills, you have the right education, you have the right pillars, that career move is a very doable move.
And I think that's wonderful, wonderful content there. And I'll just add a little lived experience. I was joking around the queen of lateral moves, but I'm also the queen of moving around in classifications. So I've been IS, AS, EC, PM, and it all does come down to those exactly what you said, like those transferable skills. And if you're able to demonstrate that you have those competencies in those different streams, it's definitely doable to move between them. And if you do find yourself in a situation of workforce adjustment where you find yourself in that situation, sorry, I'm on my phone and someone's got a call coming in. So I'm just going to refuse that. So sorry. Oh, technical issues. I hope you're still there. Okay, you are. Oh. So,
no
um,
problem.
yeah, so what I was gonna say was, I'm just now I've totally lost my train of thought. But yeah, if you can demonstrate that you have those competencies and skills, you can move between. And there's definitely a lot of things that overlap. So I'll just add that there. So thank you.
Thank you so much for adding that. No, definitely important to focus on the transferable skills and also just understanding yourself and your skills too. So thank you both for that. For the next question, we have, there seems to be a lot more advice for indeterminate positions, but for term employees who cannot automatically become indeterminate because the clock has been stopped, can you give some advice for those employees?
Sure. So I can also answer this one. This is a very important and valid question. And it always starts with communication with your higher up. Is there any chance of transforming your term into an indeterminate position? Is there a position that exists? Is there an intent to do that? Is the funding there? All of those questions have to be asked before you're able to push towards that way. Maybe the answer is very simple. There is no option within this group, within this team. Then what is the next thing to do? What about networking? Can you connect me with somebody who has a position that is open? Can I go onto the GC jobs at gc.ca and look at some positions that are open? Can I use my current tools, my current accesses today to try to get these things? You're in the government, so you know today, for example, that the organization that are doing more security stuff like DND, CBSA, RCMP, etc., those are the ones that have money today. So can you get somebody within your team to connect you to somebody within these teams and maybe help you get an interview and a job there? It is very difficult today. I'm not saying it's easy, but what are the things that you're doing on your end to get over that limitation that exists today in your current team to renew your term?
Thank you for that, Jermaine. For the next,
Oh,
did you
oh,
want to add to that, Laura?
yeah,
Yeah, go
sorry,
right
I
ahead.
just couldn't find I was like trying to find the thing on my phone. So, I think that that's all excellent advice, and not to kind of just to be realistic, like if your term is not kind of extended and you're not able to find another position, I think maintaining connections and networks within the federal government, even if you find that maybe you're not able to stay in, will be very very important. And I know that there are some external things that are open. Well, LinkedIn is a great example. Stay connected to the Federal Youth Network. And as Jermaine was saying, tune into those departments that are the priorities of the day to see what opportunities might be there.
Thanks, Laura. Which kind of ties into the next one actually about networks. So, do you have any advice for how to move laterally? It feels difficult to make connections when working in a small office outside of the NCR and even outside the regional hubs.
I don't mind jumping first this time, Jermaine. You can add. So um yeah, yeah, being outside of where things are happening, can definitely be a challenge. And networking is something, well, especially since the pandemic, there's definitely more virtual options to be engaged and connected. So, Federal Youth Network, for example, oh my goodness, I don't know, whoever wasn't here during the pandemic, the Federal Youth Network came and supported, and did all kinds of great activities to connect with each other. So getting involved as a member for your department on the Federal Youth Network so that you can help kind of set the strategic direction for your department, and then also be connected with people is a great option. Joining those like the interdepartmental networks is big, but also employee networks. That'll give you a chance to work with people maybe not in your area, to make those connections. So those are a couple of my recommendations.
Maybe my turn to add to you, Laura. We live in a beautiful country, even though it has its flaws, but one of the most kind countries that exist. I have never refused or been refused a coffee chat when asked in a nice, polite way. So with the virtual world that we're in right now, or hybrid, we're no longer in fully virtual, but with the hybrid world that we're in, reach out. This is your chance to actually reach out and connect, whether it's on an individual basis, whether it's through networks, like the Federal Youth Network or other groups. So one of my first events that I actually went to in person was the project management, the investment management and project management community of practice. That was the first time I ever went to a government event, and then COVID hit. What did I do? I kept involving myself in this network virtually, and I led a portion of that network, and I kept pushing and pushing and expanded my network. I was new to Ottawa. I knew no one. So, public service, new to Ottawa, knew nobody, but these networks, virtual networks, helped me really expand my base of people that I know. So, all this to say, take advantage of the tools that we have in our hands and don't be shy. You are the ones fighting for your careers, and we all are our best career storytellers.
And that's a great perspective, Jermaine. I think open communication is very, very important. So just keep the conversation going with everyone, right? So for the next one, is there a trick to determining, sorry, just scrolled up. Is there a trick to determining a classification equivalency? CRA largely uses different classifications than the rest of the public service, and figuring out what my current equivalent is in other agency has been something of a struggle. Any suggestions for that?
Well, I'm not an expert, but I know there's a calculation out there. I would reach out to, kind of the, HR within, maybe within your group or with someone, if you have a connection to someone in HR in another department. I know for me, when I was workforce adjusted, they gave me there was an equivalent table that they gave me, but I don't have it anymore. So I don't know if that's something the Federal Youth Network can find and share, but it is a percentage. The salaries need to be within a certain percentage to be an equivalent, if that helps.
I think somebody shared something about it in the chat or in the Q&A, but I'll let the Finn maybe send a follow-up message to everybody or add it as a resource.
Thank you. And for our next question, one moment. I've never gotten any direction for what to put in my employees' comment section of my PMAs. So they've mostly been blank for years. What should we use those for us that get the most to get the most out of our PMAs?
Excuse the term, but chat GPT the hell out of it. Okay. Use the tool. Like it's your own career, it's your own tool. Use whatever you want to achieve what you want to achieve. I'll give you an example. When I first joined the government, I had 15 years of experience outside the government in the private sector. I managed teams, I managed budget and all of that. And I got into the government and I was told, you cannot be a manager because you have never managed a budget or a team in the government. So you cannot be that. What did I put in my PMA in that section? I want to manage team members. They told me, but you can't because your classification doesn't allow for that. You're not high in the food chain to manage people. I said, great, give me students, give me contractors, give me anything, right? So I was able to write that section for me to be able to achieve the things that I had to achieve. Did I manage a budget? Great. Give me a small mini project. It was $20,000, nothing really fancy, and I managed a small project. Now I manage a budget. So the year after, I could say very clearly, I managed a budget and I managed people. And it's just building block after block after block to get to being able to get to the steps that I wanted to achieve. So use it to your advantage. It's you. You tell your story. Don't let others push you in a corner and not allow you to tell your own story.
And that's great. I'll also add, I track kind of my achievements throughout the year on just like a Google Drive thing or, or a document somewhere. And like my key achievements, I have a little folder. This was a tip from people who might know Kathy Lusk, who's a fabulous senior leader out in the Atlantic region. Keep a folder of all your kudos. Like if you've done a good job on
Yes.
something, kind of track that. And the employee comment section, is an opportunity to also add, it's like this, at the end of the year, you can say, I led this initiative, I did this, I did that. So it's also an opportunity to show what you've achieved as well, I would say.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. And I think we have time for one last question. Let me just refresh this. Are lateral moves seen as betraying your current team? How would What would be the best way to approach this matter? Should you notify your manager in advance that you're looking into this?
Yes, because we're all here trying to backstab each other as if we're not working for the exact same big employer. I'm sorry, I had to be sarcastic. I get the point of that question. I've been exposed to that in one of my jobs in the government. I was moving and they told me, you can't move, you're betraying us. But somebody told me, you're not betraying anybody. You're still within the government. You're just joining a different team within the government. So it shouldn't be seen as a betrayal. You've given what you can give in that team, or you haven't because you don't fit, whatever the reason is. Now it's time to go give the best of you in a different team. And if your current manager sees it as a betrayal, then maybe you shouldn't have worked with that person before. I'm sorry, but there are toxic people out there, and a good manager will always push you to the next level. And a good manager will also always tell you you're not ready to move to that other team. So stay here because this other team will not protect you, will not elevate you in a way that I do. So have those conversations and bring in your good judgment. If your manager isn't supporting you, then you probably need to get the hell out of there. And if you have a good manager and you're having those conversations and they're telling you it's a bad move, then maybe you have to believe them and trust them. But that's your decision. But no, it's not a betrayal. Don't take it like that.
Yeah, I'm going to add to that as well because as I joked around, I have done a lot of lateral moves. And I will say that for me, I just openly communicate kind of what my goals are, where I want to go, how I'd like to get there. And I find being open is definitely has served me well, but each situation is different, right? So it'll come down to your judgment. Um, you know, um, but the experience that I've had within the federal government is when I have been looking to do lateral moves, I've had the full support of my management. I haven't had issues, but I did struggle, of course, internally sometimes because it's like I've committed to do this, but now there's this other opportunity that's more aligned with where I want to go, with kind of, things like that. So it's an internal struggle and it's normal to go through that and to have those feelings. Like you want to maintain those good relationships. But what I would say is that really the open communication and you're using your PMA, like, if you want to go somewhere, get people on board to help you get there.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. All right, thank you to our panelists for sharing their insights today and to everyone in the audience for your thoughtful questions. You each bring a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience, and this discussion has been incredibly informative. I know I've learned a lot, and I hope everyone has learned a lot from today. We've explored ways to grow your career through lateral moves, understanding classifications, and the support available for those going through the workforce adjustment. We know that these topics can feel complex and it's normal to have questions along the way. I hope today's conversation has offered some practical ideas, some clarity and perspective to help you take your next steps with confidence. So for those of you that like to revisit today's conversation or explore these topics further, the recordings will be available on the Fin YouTube page, and additional discussions can be found through the podcast series. We do have one final polling question. The results will not be shared, so feel free to comment on that. Thank you all for joining us today. Please join us again on Thursday at 1 p.m. as we kick off day 2 of Career Bootcamp. On Thursday, we'll be discussing how to leverage relationships to support career development and long-term success. If you missed out on an opportunity just to speak to the various exhibitors earlier today, you can still view the static booths and resources. If you'd like to learn more about the various networks and communities, we encourage you to reach out and connect with their representatives. Resources, as mentioned before, will be available on the wiki page, and recordings of this event will be available on our YouTube channel. Thank you everyone for attending and being here. Have a wonderful rest of your day.